But what are some of the head storylines, the main storylines that we should be looking at? I know there's a lot of people in camp. Frank Klose has a list of them all on our website right now, 973ESPN.com. He's back for another season of Phillies baseball as we welcome our Phillies insider, Frank Klose, back for Pitchers and Catchers Day. Frank, what's up, buddy?
Not much. How are you guys? Nice baseball's back.
Yes, man. And baseball pitchers and catchers, it would be pouring rain here today.
Yeah, actually down there it kind of looked a little foggy as well when the day broke, but they're having a nice day down there, it looks like, after all.
All right, so we know one of the big stories is how big the roster is. I mean, there's a lot of competition. What are some of the biggest spots up for grabs in your mind if you're going to spring training and you want to watch some positional battles or some roster battles? Where do they begin for you?
Well, they have a lot of people in camp that are veteran utility infielders, and really the bench is going to be made up of a few of these guys because, last year they always had Scott, in the last couple of years they've always had Scott Kingery to sort of bounce around wherever they need him. Well, this year he projects as a starter. So who are going to be the guys that fill in the infield? There's an extra roster spot too. So, who's going to be versatile? Who can give you some really good at-bats off the bench? And in the infield and the outfield, certainly a local guy, Matt Caesar, he's going to be one of them that's competing for a bench job. And with the extra roster spot, really it's kind of all up for grabs. You expect Roman Quinn to be around on the bench if he's healthy, but if he's not, of course, that's another spot. So really the bench is really kind of up for grabs right now. And also the bullpen. It seems like they just loaded up on non-roster invitees in the bullpen, and they're really hoping that somebody sticks. And I think that if you listen to Joe Girardi's press conference today, he's talked about a lot of the what ifs, and you mentioned the likes of Seranthony Dominguez, and the question is like, well, is he going to give you anything? And he mentions Adam Morgan, and Adam Morgan finished the year on the injured list, and it sounds like Tommy Hunter's headed back, but is he even ready? So there's a lot to be worked out in terms of the bullpen still, and there's just so many in terms of number, and there's not a lot of clear favorites other than last year's holdovers, Hector Neris and Jose Alvarez. They're in good shape. Hopefully, if last year didn't do anything to them, if they can repeat what they did last year. But beyond that, there's still a lot of question marks in that bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going in with this same type of bullpen that you had last year, I mean, isn't that an issue for you? I mean, don't you take issue with that, Frank?
I really thought they needed one more sort of secure piece. And in their defense, and it's kind of hard to fault them because there really wasn't anybody out there that was that solid piece. You saw two injured guys in Dylan Betances. For example, he was the one that they thought maybe would be the guy that Joe Girardi brings back. And, he gets $10.6 million from the Mets as sort of a wild card. So there really was not. And then, of course, in Oakland, they non-tender a guy, and he ends up getting $10 million. Like, that's just how desperate everybody was for the bullpen. And it's kind of hard to fault them for not getting any more reliable arms. But it seems like they're going to go with a large quantity and hope that some guys really step up.
Frank Klose with us, Phillies pitchers and catchers. One of the things you mentioned, Tommy Hunter. They brought back Blake Parker. There's a lot of names. Drew Storen. I mean, they brought in a whole heck of a lot of cast-offs here. But it sounds like David Robertson, a guy they signed last year, he seemed to be written off, but Joe Girardi said today there was a possibility that he might help out in the second half of the year.
Yeah, he kind of threw that out there. I think he was just doing his old closer a little favor there by trying to keep it positive. But usually when you take that Tommy John surgery, it knocks you out a full calendar year. So I think if David Robertson comes back at all, it would be somewhat of a bonus. And in fact, when Girardi mentioned it, one of the reporters said, "Well, wait a minute, there's a chance he could help you this year." And if there is a chance, it's probably late in the season. And Girardi was saying, "Well, hey, if you get guys like this back down the line, maybe we'll treat it like it's sort of a deadline acquisition where you get some bonus help at the end, and that's a great guy if you could get him added to your bullpen at the end." But yeah, I think that it just kind of shows that there's still a lot of certainty here in this Phillies bullpen as they break camp.
Bryce Harper, that's a name, right, Frank? And this time last year it was Bryce's, not just this time, but Bryce's first of everything, his first spring training, his first, off season, everything now. And he's entering his second. And how much of a difference is that? And I guess what signs should we be looking for Bryce Harper's growth as a Philly?
Well, interestingly, this is really the first spring training that's going to open, and he's actually there.
Right.
Remember, this kind of carried on for a while. So I think this will probably be advantageous in that he can actually come in and get settled and focus on the season. I made my first trip down to spring training, and he wasn't even signed yet when I went down the first time last season. And so here he's going to be there from the start. He'll get to do his normal, sort of routine that he would have when he goes into spring training. So I think that can only help him, because, he overall, if you look at the full body of work, he had a very, very nice season. But it seems like after that initial burst of energy, he leveled off just a little bit. I don't think we're going to see a downturn. Not that his quote-unquote downturn was that bad, but I think he can come in much more level this year because, the emotions of being the new guy and seeing a new place and new fans, that's all going to be gone. So in a way, it'll sort of be more business as usual for Bryce Harper. And in his career, the numbers show that business as usual has always been very successful. So hopefully that'll help him, really just settle in a way that he wasn't able to do last year.
I think another big storyline here is Hoskins and Harper. Hoskins and Harper go hand in hand when you mention one of them. And they could never really get on the same page last year. When Harper was hot, Hoskins wasn't, and vice versa. So what are you looking for out of Hoskins as things start to get underway?
Well, last year was definitely a tough year for the Phillies in terms of the offense. And, of course, it led to them firing their hitting coach, John Maley, rather late in the season. So I think what's going to be different this year, you have Joe Dillon working with him. You got a new set of eyes. Somebody that might be able to see things that others didn't necessarily get to see. And there's only so much Charlie Manuel could do by the time he entered. So even if Manuel noticed something in Hoskins' swing, there really wasn't a lot of time to do anything about it. But, I think just for someone like Hoskins, the fact that it's a new hitting coach, new manager, it seems like it's starting fresh for somebody like him. And even though he had some moments where he was scuffling last year, he's still rather young, and he didn't have a long extended period of time of success. So maybe something like that is good for him to sort of take a step back, and with this new set of eyes from Dillon and Girardi, maybe he can feel like he's going in with a clean slate, and I think that can only help somebody like Hoskins, who clearly has a lot of talent, but. Baseball is a funny game. One little tweak in your swing, sometimes you never really recover it.
Frank Klose with us, covers the Phillies, of course. Today, Joe Girardi said that Segura and Kingery will both get reps at second and third. Obviously, Didi will be the new shortstop, so it means Segura needs to find a new spot. What would the optimal? I'm going back to the Gabe Kapler days here. What would the optimal setup be in the infield?
I actually like Kingery playing second base. His natural position, he's never had a chance to just be turned loose and play it. I thought he was passable at third base last year especially. I don't think he was a fantastic defender by any means. But let's remember, too, we have Alec Boehm sort of lurking in the background here, somebody who could play a role on the Phillies later. I would rather put Scott Kingery at second base, leave him alone, and then put Gene Segura at third base, which is also on the left side of the infield, because let's consider maybe Alec Boehm comes up in July and just takes over third base. Didi's only on a one-year deal, so maybe next year you need Segura to go right back to shortstop. So maybe I would put him on the left side at third base. I would realize that it's not ideal, but long term it could work itself out. And I think Segura is a versatile enough guy that it's worth a shot. Now, that said, we haven't really seen a lot of Gene Segura at third base. He's played second base. He's played shortstop. That's what spring training is for, is to kind of see how they both do. Certainly you have some film on Scott Kingery from last year, and you can make the best overall decision. But, Segura still has 3 more years under contract, so he's around for a while. So You really got to figure out what the long-term plan might be. And if the long-term plan is that he goes back to shortstop, I might just want to keep him on the left side of the infield for now.
All right, Frank. The big question, I guess, if you look at this whole thing right now, is the pitching any better? You got Nola. Obviously, Arrieta's coming back. They signed, why is his name escaping me? Zach Wheeler. And then you got Velasquez, Eflin, and the rest of that crew. So does this starting rotation make you feel like this team could be in this race and be a playoff team?
Well, kind of the wild card here is Spencer Howard, their top prospect. Joe Girardi today said that they're probably going to be conservative with using him this spring because, last year he threw a lot of innings and then they played the playoffs and they were going to send him to the fall league and they stopped short on that. So I think they're trying to make sure that he can help the Phillies down the line if they need him. So the depth in the starting rotation right now, one of Pivetta or Velasquez is going to have to be in the rotation to start no matter what. And then behind that, if there's an injury or something, then you need both of them there. So we're kind of I feel like we've been saying the same thing for 4 years straight, that these are two talented arms, Velasquez and Pivetta, and this may be their year, right? You hear people talking about that all the time.
You're not roping me in this time.
Right. So I thought for sure that after last season, the Phillies would add not just one starter, but two starters, and that they would have to sort of fight their way into the rotation. And you know what? One of them is they're going to have to fight their way in, but it's going to be a one or the other kind of thing. So hopefully, what happens is this new coaching staff and Brian Price, who's a very well respected pitching coach, can really get the most out of one of these guys, and one of them can step up. Because really, only behind that is really the next name in your rotation is Spencer Howard, but he's probably not ready to start the season in the major league. So beyond that, you got to look at like Ranger Suarez, who might be in the bullpen, be in the rotation. I mean, they just don't have a lot of depth. Cole Irvin, who didn't really have much success as a starter in the major leagues, but ended up appearing in a lot of games. So that does concern me a little bit. It would be wonderful if one of them steps up and really does take ownership of a spot. And, over the off season, you heard a lot about Nick Pivetta working with his agent and some of his other top clients, that are big name pitchers. So who knows? Maybe this is finally the breakout year for one of these guys. But, if you just get what you've gotten the last few years, that's just not going to cut it. And they're going to have to do something.
At Frank Klose on Twitter, baseball's back, the Phillies, spring training. We've got it all for you, the coverage on 97.3 ESPN and 97.3ESPN.com. Thanks, Frank. Hey, by the way, when are you making your first trek to Clearwater?
Well, I'm definitely going the 29th, so the 28th. So I'll be there the 28th to March 4th, and then I'm trying to sneak one more in after that.
All right, so you'll be there right when they begin, and then maybe a second stint for Frank down there for the Phils. All right, pal.
Thanks, guys.